transitions, gender transitions that is, and how to support transitioning employees, that's a quote. She banned agencies from assessing salary histories before hiring because it could exacerbate pre-existing inequality. So let me just ask you, are you going to unwind all of that nonsense that the American people got a good hard look at in November, I might add, and said an emphatic no to the trans ideology, no to men in women's locker rooms, no to critical race theory and calling this country a racist country that's systemically evil and ruined and terrible? Are you going to put a stop to that in OPM and get OPM focused back again on its core mission?
Yeah, Mr. Senator, I want to make sure that we focus on how do we create a great workforce that is responsive to the needs of the people and that does so in a way that's efficient. As you well know, of course, the President has already issued executive orders with respect to the DEI departments in government, and we will fully comply with those.
Fantastic. You'll vigorously enforce those, I would assume, Mr.
Yes,
Cooper.
Senator.
Yes, very good. Mr. Ueland, it's nice to see you again, and I've enjoyed working with you over the years. Congratulations on this nomination. Thanks for being willing to do it. And the committee has just a tremendous letter in your support from the Susan B. Anthony list and the National Right to Life Committee, talking about your longstanding commitment to the pro-life cause, to the basic principle that every child born in this country deserves to be treated with equality and fairness, welcomed and protected. And it's a tremendous letter. It's great to see a member of the administration get this kind of support from the pro-life community. If this has not already been entered into the record, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask unanimous consent to do so.
Without objection.
Mr. Ueland, let me just, in the remaining moments here, let me just give you an opportunity to talk about what your priorities will be. And let me say, again, congratulations to you on this nomination. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Senator. I really appreciate that. Very quickly, obviously, to serve with honor and dignity and effectuate the President's agenda. In terms of the DDM specifically, make sure that what we're doing to protect our cybersecurity, the information of taxpayers and employees, is advocated and ensured. See what we can do with newer technology and ways to help downsize, rescope, and reorient the federal government as the President has directed, and ultimately serve at the pleasure of the Director and the Deputy Director for any other duties that might be assigned to me.
Very good. Congratulations to you both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Slotkin.
Thank you. Thanks for being here today and Mr. Kupor meeting in my office. My concern, as I raised with you in my office, is the security of the data of the people who serve in the federal government and in the U.S. military. We had a conversation about how when I was at the Pentagon, myself and tens of thousands of others had our data stolen by the Chinese government, a foreign actor who hacked our system and got a ton of some of our most sensitive information from OPM, right? So the agency that you're hoping to take over here. At the same time, we have reports that the DOGE folks are getting access to taxpayer information, to information for folks on Medicare, so sensitive health information. We see them now pointing their sort of sights on military and veteran information. You are the ultimate arbiter of personnel policy. Give me some assurance that you're just not going to let Mr. Musk and the DOGE folks go in, take our data, put it into AI-enabled software, and use it for any other way than what people have given permission for.
Yes, Senator, thank you. And I enjoyed the conversation we had together. Look, I mentioned this earlier. I believe very strongly in data privacy, as we talked about. And when I'm running OPM, if I have the opportunity to do so, we will ensure that we protect data privacy and make sure that people who are not authorized to have access to systems will not have that access.
Yeah, the thing that I'm looking for is just a little bit of backbone that when this is happening at another agency, right? So now they go into the Veterans Administration or they go into the Department of Defense. They already went into the Treasury over the head of the Secretary of the Treasury. It's embarrassing. He came in front of Congress and said, I'm not going to let anyone have taxpayer information. And then literally in the same week, DOGE announced that they were taking all this information, sometimes on their own servers that they brought into the departments and agencies. So I'm not looking for like, well, if they come to me with this specific problem, I'm going to raise my hand and do something about it. I'm looking to you as the person who will be the guardian of our policy on information on U.S. persons, that you will stick up and say, hey, you know, I'm concerned that I'm hearing these reports. I'm going to go out and I'm going to proactively do something about it. So how do I know that you're not going to just be another Secretary of the Treasury who tells us one thing and then goes and gets his, you know, his authorities just rammed over by DOGE and a bunch of 20-year-olds?
Well, Senator, look, I believe OPM is a really important part of the equation in the broader personnel system, and I will do as you're describing. I mean, I don't think it's appropriate for us to give access to systems if people aren't rightly available to see those.
Okay.
And I certainly think OPM can play a role there.
I hope you do. We haven't seen that backbone yet, but I'm still hoping. Mr. Euland, in your role at OMB, you know, I think about the movement of money and how important it can be to some of our communities. In Michigan, we just had terrible ice storms. We had 100,000 people without power, still 50,000 people approximately right now in the northern part of our lower peninsula are without power. The governor's been up there. She invited President Trump to come and see it. We haven't filed a declaration of emergent federal request for help yet. But how do I know that if a state like Michigan asks for money from FEMA, does all the paperwork the way we traditionally do when we have an emergency, how do I know that you'll treat our state fairly, that you'll be objective about it, that you won't bring politics into it, and that you will administer the funds regardless of whether the state has a Democratic governor or a Republican governor?
Senator, thanks for the question. If the state of Michigan or any other state makes an application through the appropriate FEMA channels, then they will be appropriately reviewed, and the president will have an opportunity to make a decision on those applications. If Michigan has not yet elected to make a submission, then there's really nothing we can react to right now.
Of course. No, we would have to make that. My concern is that we've heard lots of rumors about the future of FEMA and the desire by the Trump administration to collapse FEMA, declare it no longer an agency, go to block grants, some other kinds of assistance. Do you have a view on the existence of FEMA since this committee oversees that body?
Great question, Senator, and I'm old enough to have been young enough to be around when FEMA went through pretty significant expansion starting in the early 1990s under then President Clinton. There is no doubt that the roles and responsibilities of FEMA, as well as many other organizations, agencies, and departments of the federal government, deserve a review, especially given some of the most atrocious, irresponsible, and long lingering do-outs that we've seen as examples of FEMA failures here in the past few years under the previous administration. So it's a calling from the president to take a look at FEMA, as well as a lot of other things, and see whether or not it's fit for purpose here in the 21st century. What's the role of states? What's the role of communities? What's the role of the private sector in moments of disaster? And that conversation, I'm sure, will be robust, both internally and with Congress, and I look forward to engaging with the committee on it.
I think we're coming up on the term of limitations when we can blame others. You now own it, right? You're going to own it over there. And so we look forward to what you're going to do to make sure that FEMA, or the capabilities of FEMA, endure. The Secretary of Homeland Security was the beneficiary. So in any case, we look forward to you fixing it and what you're going to do to make sure we still get that assistance out.
Well, I appreciate that, Senator. And quickly, Mr. Chairman, before the hearing concludes, there have been a lot of requests this morning for an investigation about Signalgate, so-called Signalgate. I'm just here to say, on behalf of at least myself, just as an individual, knowing many of the people who are involved in that signal chain, those are men and women of the highest caliber. They serve our country with distinction. They had no intent, nor did they release inappropriate information to the general public, and the mission in which they were engaged on the direction and authority of the President of the United States was highly successful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ernst.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to our nominees for being here today. There has been a lot of discussion about reductions in force today, and Mr. Kupor, I'll just ask you, if you happen to know this, what % of federal employees have received a reduction in force notice?
Yes, Senator, I don't know the specific number, but it's a relatively small number if you look at the overall workforce today.
Yes, and while the RIFs are front and center, let's look at some of the employees who might need to get a RIF notice if they haven't already. A Veterans Affairs manager responsible for scheduling veterans appointments posted on social media that he was phoning it in from a bubble bath while calls to the VA have gone unanswered. Yes, that is a hairy leg hanging out of a bathtub. That is the actual photo that he posted during his work hours and on a Zoom call. An Army veteran gave up on getting mental health, and please listen to this, everyone. An Army veteran gave up on getting mental health care from the VA because after years of trying to get an appointment, he met with a therapist who, quote, spent the appointment singing the praises of remote work with a cat draped around her neck. He said it was such a disaster that, quote, now I'm just on my meds doing my best. A HUD employee was arrested for drunk driving at 3:30 in the afternoon on a Friday and may have been paid for time spent sitting in jail. HUD had no idea until I told them. For more than 3 years, a Social Security employee was running a home inspection business. Meanwhile, his mother was responding to his emails. It should have been a hole-in-one, but it took the IRS nearly a decade to fire an IRS employee who was golfing on the taxpayer's dime. The E in DOGE doesn't stand for elimination, it stands for efficiency. The American people are best served by an efficient workforce full of good employees, and there are many. I have been heartened by the number of federal employees who have approached me blowing the whistle on bureaucrats who are failing to live up to the standards we expect. There are so many more unnamed federal employees like the current acting administrator of the Social Security Administration, Mr. Dudek, who know veterans and taxpayers deserve better than bubble bath bureaucrats and self-interested therapists. Mr. Dudek demonstrated his commitment to stopping fraud and improper payments and was rewarded with a big promotion. So Mr. Kupor and Mr. Uland, how can agencies be empowered to not only dismiss bad employees quickly, but also provide positive incentives for good employees like fast-tracked promotions and other rewards? And I'll start with you, Mr. Kupor.
Great, thank you, Senator. We talked about this a little bit in your office, so I'm happy to return to it. Yes, look, one of the things that we would like to do if I have the opportunity to lead OPM is completely relook at the entire talent management process. One of the most critical ones, as you mentioned, is the overall performance review and promotion process. And so it's very clear from my perspective that we want a high-performing, high-accountability organization. I mentioned this in my opening statement, but we should not have a situation where 69% of the workforce is ranked above average. That just kind of defies logic in many respects. So one of the things that I think OPM should do is do a complete review of that, figure out ways in which we can have a system that, again, rewards innovation, rewards good work, but also one in which if we have individuals who unfortunately are not able to perform their functions, managers need the ability to remove those people in a timely manner from their organization.
No, and thank you. I will assume your confirmation and say that I look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you,
Mr. Uland.
Thank you, Senator. And just very quickly, that's what President Trump expects out of us. To take a look at the rules of the road for the federal workforce, find ways to innovate, create, and ultimately set new norms about high performance and the accountability that comes along with the opportunity and the privilege of federal service. We are all at-will employees. You are at will of the electorate. Everybody behind you, I've served my entire life up here in other roles in the private sector as an at-will employee. It's invigorating. It's exciting. You learn what the expectations are, and you work hard with a high-performing team to deliver results. I'm excited about the President's charge here to rethink, reimagine, and renew for the federal workforce here in the 21st century, and that's my commitment to this committee.
Yes, and I thank you both. And I know that my time has expired. We don't have other members here, so I'm just going to make one final point Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So just a final point, because I know I had a colleague the other day that spent 25 hours talking about the federal government on the floor of the Senate. And part of what he said really bothered me, because there were insinuations that there would be cuts to the Social Security Administration, and people wouldn't see delivery and you know, all of this talk. It was talk. But what I wanted to do was stand up on the floor and say, and I know from personal experience, again, because I had to take issue with this, the Social Security Administrative Office in Northwest Iowa had been closed, and the workers were doing remote work for 4 years. COVID? I think not, folks. We're beyond that. 4 years, constituents came to me complaining because they couldn't get their calls returned, they couldn't get emails returned, and they couldn't go to the office and see anyone. These are people seeking disability services. These are elderly. These are people that have lost their spouses and need assistance with Social Security, and they couldn't get their phone calls returned, emails returned, and they couldn't see someone in person. I had to call the Social Security Administrator into my office to answer why these people are not at work and assisting our citizens. So don't tell me that everything has been rolling just so smoothly under this last administration. We need people that care about our constituents. They need to show up to work and do their work. We should reward good employees and get rid of those that truly don't want to work for Americans and only are working for themselves. So I do expect that from both of you, and I know that we will get that from both of you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ernst. You're almost done. We're saving the best for last. Senator Ernst's story is about outrageous behavior from federal employees and reminds me of my favorite one. This person was second in charge at the EPA in the Obama administration. I can't remember his name. He went to jail eventually, but for about a decade, he was telling his superiors at work, well, you know, I'll be missing a lot of work and I won't be here a lot of times because, you know, I also work for the CIA. And I didn't realize people worked for the EPA and the CIA at the same time, but nobody ever called the CIA to ask him if he worked there. He did this for a decade. In the end, I think he owed over $1 million that he had to pay back in salary, and I think he went to jail, but it went on for a decade. And he just simply told people, but we had a shutdown, and during the shutdown, they actually did some of the things you're supposed to do. They actually looked at his worksheet, and he hadn't been there in 6 months, and they're like, oh yeah, he works for the CIA. Well, has anybody ever called the CIA? They called and they'd never heard of him. So the outrageous stuff goes on, and, you know, I'm glad we're shaking it up. I'm glad we're doing this. But I guess one of the things I wanted to point out is that, you know, Mr. Euland, you've worked most of your career, if not all your career, for the federal government. So do you have a preconceived notion that federal employees are all bad?
Senator, thanks for the question, and I'm here to assure you I don't work for the CIA. So, but I'm in my 20s, to reference Senator Moreno a little earlier. No, I don't have a preconceived notion that all federal employees are bad.
And the same question for Mr. Cooper. Do you have a preconceived notion?
No, I don't. And again, you know, as we've discussed, look, this is exactly why a system of accountability matters. We want the very best people to show up every day and do their best, and we should have an environment that enables that.
But it goes back to the question, you know, the minority made this point that, well, people who are being fired have just been promoted. But if you were running a business, let's say not the government, a business, and it were losing $2 trillion a year, maybe some good people would have to be let go, right? I mean, in order to right the ship, you have to let go some people. So I don't think it's a conviction of you as a person or the Trump administration if some people who got a promotion. Plus, there is a question, were too many people being promoted, or were people being promoted to try to protect them from being fired? But it isn't, I think, a accurate assumption to say, oh, we hate all the federal employees. I'm a federal employee. There are good people who work for the federal government. And but even some good people will have to probably let go in downsizing of things. And, you know, I just think it's important that people not go away with the message that we're all Republicans are against all federal employees. We have many good federal employees here that work for us, you know, and that have worked in government. So I think that's not true. With regard to like the concept of collective bargaining, though, you know, we have at times through our history thought that people who provide like for the military or our security, we won't have collective bargaining there because we can't have soldiers going on strike. We've had the same sort of thought with air traffic controllers, and Reagan fired them famously at one time because he said you can't just have them walk off the job. So while collective bargaining is not something I'm opposed to, in fact, I think there's some areas of our economy I'd like to see more collective bargaining for consumers on drug prices, things like that. There's ways that collectively we can drive prices down or drive wages up, if that may be. But it doesn't mean we need to have collective bargaining everywhere, the right to strike, and you have to be careful. For many, many decades, for most of the history of the country, you didn't have unions in government, and the reasoning was that government was essential. You had to have them, so you can't have government go on strike. You can't have Congress go on strike and not show up. You can't have our employees show up, and so all of our employees, as Mr. Hewlin said, are at will. One of the things I've tried to do is see if there are any ways we can nibble around the corners. And I've always thought of this bill as a small bill with large sort of expectations. We call it bonuses for cost cutters. And what we try to do is take the incentives that you have in private business where you get rewarded if your company makes more money. It's hard to tell if the government makes more money, but if you could cut costs, government loses less money, and then reward those people individually. There is a little bit of this, but there isn't quite enough of it. So we have a bill called Bonuses for Cost Cutters to expand it. We've occasionally gotten some bipartisan support. Often, though, the debate runs this way, that they say, well, that's fine, we'll give the bonus to the employee. If you're in charge of a $12 million budget and you save $1 million, we'll give you $10,000. I think that's a great idea, but they want the $1 million to still be spent. And my whole point is, if you save $1 million, let's send it back to the Treasury, which we'll get back into this debate over impoundment. We're not going to solve that today, but ultimately it's going to have to be solved. And in the meantime, as I've told you both privately and everybody who will listen, we hope the administration will send us back a rescission package. It's a special vote. It's a simple majority. Everybody talks about the budget reconciliation, all these things we can do. That's true. But there's also something called rescission that comes out of the Impoundment Act, and it's a simple majority way to cut money. The president is very popular. He won a well-deserved election, and I hope the president will use his political capital to come to us and say, you know, $2 trillion in debt, the way we get rid of it is, why don't you accept this money back, take it back. And once we do, it'll send this message. The public's behind him. The public, frankly, mostly is behind the, not spending $2 million doing sex changes in Guatemala, not spending $3 million on girl-centric climate change, not spending $4 million on social media influencers in Ukraine. The public is with us on this. But I've been advocating to have it sent back, have it sent back through rescission so it's voted on by Congress and it has some permanence.
Senator, can I just quickly
yes.
respond on rescissions? The director has been very public, the president as well, very clear to us at OMB. We will be sending a rescissions package, at least one, to Congress. We do expect success. We are excited about the partnership, and we're looking forward to the president being able to sign into law actual provable spending eliminations through the process of rescission.
And we'll end with this. Mr. Cooper, I don't know if you've heard of one of your predecessors. His name was Don Devine, and he was OPM director for Reagan, and he's a friend of mine. He's written several books. One of his books is America's Way Back. I highly recommend it. Sort of the thesis from my point of view is that freedom requires tradition, or another word for tradition is virtue. Washington talked about this, a lot of our founding fathers, and the reason you need virtue and you need some kind of religious foundation or sense of right and wrong is that there aren't enough policemen. We don't think about it. It's like, well, why do people not steal? Because they'll go to jail? Some people don't steal because they'll go to jail, but most of us don't steal because we think it's wrong. But if 98% of us quit believing in right and wrong, there are dangers to that, and it's just the importance, and government can't create that. That's something you accept personally, your religion, your tradition, your faith, right and wrong. Maybe I'm a big fan of Don Devine's, and maybe when you're done, you'll go on to write famous books like Don Devine. But we wish you both, we wish you both success.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The nominees have filed responses to biographical and financial questionnaires, answered pre-hearing questions submitted by the committee, and had their financial statements reviewed by the Office of Government Ethics. Without objection, this information will be made part of the hearing record, with the exception of the financial data which are on file with the committee. The hearing record will remain open until 5 p.m. today for the submission of statements and questions for the record. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.